What's one thing you would say to somebody who just carries that guilt, even though they've probably done the best thing that they could?
I have a little thing about guilt. Guilt is a good emotion, right? If I steal something and I feel guilty, that's good. But guilt is for when you've done something wrong. Every time that feeling of guilt comes up, just ask yourself, am I doing something wrong? Because if you're not doing something wrong, then guilt is not the correct emotion. So I really try to get people to just hold on to this one question, like, am I doing something wrong? If I'm not, then I just am having a lot of difficult feelings about things that don't make sense. But doesn't need to be one of them.
I didn't have the strength that I have now. That's when you really need people.
People who could understand.
It really did make a difference.
So finding that community, finding that tribe.
Or in that realm of chronic illness and stuff.
I barely go through it because I'd be so focused.
Never thought in a million years that would have to happen to me.
So all those emotions are valid. Yeah. Every last one of them.
I was at a low point.
Just kind of removing the stigma.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Chronic Brew.
One. Coming in live from this corner of chronic illness, it's your host, Mr. Cool Beans. How was that? Was that good?
Yeah, great.
All right, peeps. Welcome back to the Chronic Brew, the podcast where we skip the lukewarm small talk and get straight to the rich, complex reality of living with chronic illness. I'm that fellow with the cool beans, and today we are brewing up a conversation that hits home for so many of us. You know, when a chronic diagnosis enters a relationship, it doesn't just affect one person. It sits down at the table, drinks the last of the orange juice, and demands a seat in every conversation. Often we're just told to just cope or manage, but today's guest believes that we can do something much more radical. We can thrive. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has spent years helping couples navigate the messy intersections of love and health. But she isn't just speaking from a textbook. As someone living with HEDS herself, she knows exactly what it's like when the body and the heart are at odds with each other. She is the author of the essential new book, Thriving in a Relationship When You Have Chronic Illness. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the brew, Lisa Gray. Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, I'm so thrilled to have you here. You know, I have to tell you this, though. I was taking a peek into the first chapter of your book, and I was honestly, blown away. Specifically, the way you frame communication. You know, it's not just talking. You frame it as a lifeline for couples navigating chronic illness. You know, it's such a vital topic that I know is going to help so many of our listeners who feel like they're losing their voice to their diagnosis.
Great. I'm glad. I hope it's helpful to everyone.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Lisa, before we get into the deep roast of your professional work, we have a tradition here called the first sip. It's a little game of sweet or bitter, all right? I'm going to give you a chronic illness scenario, and you tell me if it's a sweet win or a bitter drag. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
All right, here we go. Canceling reservations to stay in, wear pajamas, and binge watch a series together. Sweet or bitter?
Sweet.
Sweet. Awesome. Next one. Finally giving in and buying a piece of mobility gear or a kitchen ergonomic tool that actually works. Sweet or bitter?
Sweet, for sure.
Definitely sweet. Well, how about this one? Feeling so great on Tuesday that you overdo it, knowing you'll be paying for it on Wednesday. Sweet or bitter?
Bitter.
Bitter. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I am curious about this one, though. When your partner has spent so much time with you at the doctor's that they can answer the history questions faster than you can. Sweet or bitter?
I mean, sweet, I guess. Yeah, I'll go with sweet.
All right, we got two more here. A well-meaning relative telling you that a kale smoothie or yoga will cure your HEDS. Sweet or bitter?
Bitter. That's a no-go right there.
Oh, man. Whoa. Here's another one. How about this one? Okay. When you're having a flare and your partner just brings you water and a heating pad without you having to ask. Sweet or bitter?
Sweet.
Now, you come from the marriage and family therapy background. Why is that sweet for you?
Because to me, it shows that you've communicated enough with your partner and your partner understands your experience enough to know what you need before you need to ask for it. I mean, I'm not opposed to asking for what you need, for sure. But that shows like a history of communication and empathy that lends itself towards them knowing what you need. So I like it.
Yeah, honestly, it's so refreshing to hear someone find the sweet in the chaos of chronic life. It's clear that you've lived this journey yourself, but now I want to pivot from the personal to the professional.
Yeah.
You've taken all of those bitter and sweet moments and turned them into a roadmap for other people. In your work as a therapist, you see couples at their most vulnerable points, and often when they're feeling like the brew of their relationship has gone cold because of a diagnosis, unfortunately. So let's get into the main roast of this conversation, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, this is Jessie, and you're listening to the Chronic Brew podcast.
All right. So, Lisa, you worked as an air traffic controller for a decade before becoming a therapist, right?
Yeah.
It's quite the pivot. So,
Yeah.
how did managing high stress environments and your own diagnosis with HEDS eventually lead you to specializing in chronic illness and couples therapy?
Well, I joke sometimes. I say I used to have a job where everyone had to do what I say, and now I have a job where nobody does what I say. But it is true that I think the job of air traffic controller did teach me how to think on my feet and be able to adapt to changing situations all the time. And so that's probably why I was more attracted to couples therapy than individual therapy. There's just a lot more going on, and there's a lot more needing to pivot, think on your feet, come up with ideas quickly. So yeah, I think it sort of did lend itself towards couples work. And then I think the universe just brought me people with chronic illness because I could understand their experience. So yeah.
Yo, that's a pretty smooth connection right there.
Yeah.
Now, in your book, you describe couples therapy as a grief-informed guide.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it essential for couples to recognize that a chronic illness diagnosis isn't just a medical event, but a grieving process for the life they planned?
Yeah, I think because grief can separate people. I mean, we all have heard that thing about when a couple loses a child, they often get divorced and that sort of thing. Like, people grieve differently. And
Right.
so, and especially with chronic illness, you're kind of grieving different things as well. So if you don't understand that it's a grieving process and that you're both grieving, then your partner's behavior won't really make sense to you. What they're going through won't really make sense to you. But as soon as you can put it in the context of oh, okay, we're never going to go back to the life we thought we were signing up for. So we're both grieving something, and we might be doing that differently. And we might be in different emotional experiences of grief at any given moment. Then you can approach it more with curiosity as to why your partner doesn't make sense to you instead of anger or resentment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, with grief, what they say, grief definitely comes in waves. And I know, if not taken with precaution, you can do some serious damage to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
It's been 2 years since my kidney disease journey started, and the grief still hits me from time to time.
Yeah.
I'm just a baby in all of this, still fresh to the whole chronic illness experience.
And the stages of grief aren't fixed in time. It's kind of more like a messy ball of yarn. You will visit depression from time to time with a chronic illness. That's just a normal part of grief.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So for you, HEDS, I've come to know a lot of peeps in the chronic illness community with that diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
I've also come to learn that hypermobile EDS can be incredibly invisible to the naked eye.
Yeah.
For the listeners who may be unfamiliar, could you explain to us what HEDS is and what it looks like?
So it's a connective tissue disorder. And so our bodies don't produce enough collagen or any collagen at all. And so it's kind of like, some people call it the party tricks diagnosis, because we can bend and do things with our bodies that a lot of other people can't. The problem with that is that our joints aren't very stable. And so a lot of people's joints can come out of sync, and there's a ton of fatigue. There's a lot of malabsorption issues. So there can be GI issues. The thing that's confusing about HEDS is I think every person I've ever met with HEDS presented in a different way. So there's and that's part of the trouble with getting diagnosed as well, is there's such a huge range of symptoms that it's hard to tell if it's this or something else. And then, some people, like, I have a fairly mild version of it, so I can function from day to day. And I also have clients with HEDS that are in a wheelchair or confined to their bed. So it's a enormous range of symptoms.
So HEDS can be presented in a spectrum.
Yeah.
So let's piggyback off of that. From a clinical perspective, okay, how do you help a healthy partner understand the internal weather of their partner's pain without having them to prove everything every single day?
Yeah. I mean, so many chronic illnesses are invisible, right? All of the autoimmune sort of spectrum of chronic diseases, so many of them, you can't tell by looking at a person that they are not feeling well, or they're having a flare, or they're sick, or whatever it is, and you can't see pain. And so this is a huge problem with couples because you look fine. And I always work with the healthy partner to just try to make an agreement with themselves that they are just going to believe their partner, no matter whatever their partner says, that's what they're going to believe. I don't have to be experiencing something to have empathy for someone else. Like, as a therapist, I don't have to have gone through whatever my clients have gone through in order to have empathy for them, but I do have to believe them. So believing them is the first step. You can't have empathy for someone unless you believe them. So that's sort of like the first step in helping a healthy partner, is just, let's make a pact that we're just going to believe what they are reporting about their experience. And from there, you can have more empathy.
I'm very tempted to not say, maybe some doctors need to practice that.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Gaslighting has been really popular lately.
Yeah. Medical gaslighting is real. Yes.
Oh, man. But I do love that as far as the partner's perspective.
Yeah.
While we're at it, why don't we go ahead and dive into that a little bit more? Okay. I know that you often see couples fall into that parent-child dynamic when one person becomes the primary caregiver, What is the first sign a couple should look for that they're losing their partner identity to this role?
Yeah, I think the first things is just noticing if the healthy partner isn't taking care of themselves. Like, let's say they stop going to the gym, or they're not going to lunch with their friends on Tuesday like they always used to, or any of the kind of self-care activities that, of course, depending on what the situation is, how big of an emergency it is, some of those things will fall by the wayside. But I think that if you stop taking care of yourself and pursuing your own kind of interests and desires and all of those things, you're no longer yourself. Now you're just your partner's caregiver. And so this is hard and problematic because there's so much guilt about leaving your partner at home, let's say, when they used to go play tennis with you and now you're going to go play tennis with somebody else, or that sort of thing. There's anger on the sick partner's part often, if their partner is going to go off and take care of themselves. And then there's guilt on the part of the caregiver's partner. So it's really important not to fall into that trap, and for the person who is sick to sort of commit to the idea that their partner needs to leave them sometimes and pursue other things and take care of themselves. Because otherwise, you're not going to have a partner. You're going to have a caregiver.
That was so good. And again, piggybacking over here, I think the most important thing for us to remember as far as spoonies go, we need to remember that the person that we're with, whether it's our partner or spouse or whatever the case may be, they're still an individual. And it's not an abandonment, but it's just for them to try to heal through the process while we're also healing as well. So we're healing as a couple.
Absolutely.
They need that mental brain break. They need those moments where they can just veg out a little bit and come back in even stronger so that they can support you for sure.
Right. And it's for you. It's not an abandonment. They're doing that for your benefit, because if they do that, you will have a better partner. So try not to see it as they're being selfish or they're doing, they're doing it for the relationship, because you can't have a great, thriving relationship if their only role is a caregiver.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Now, Lisa, in your sessions, you use ACT therapy in your work.
Yeah.
Could you break down the meaning of ACT as a therapeutic framework for us?
Yeah. So in acceptance and commitment therapy, the idea is that we accept all of our emotions and experiences. And so, when people come into therapy, they're often saying like, I want you to help me get rid of my anxiety, or I want you to help get rid of my depression, or I want to not do this thing anymore. And in ACT, that's not the goal. Like the idea is that the more you want to get rid of something, the more it persists.
Right.
So the idea being that we're not saying that what's happening to you is okay or acceptable or anything like that, but it is where you are right now. And so the idea being that we can tolerate and experience all of our emotions and all of our circumstances, but we don't behave from our emotions. We behave from a commitment that we have towards our values. So we accept the experiences and we commit to certain behaviors that align with our values. And so, for example, a lot of people, if I'm driving in my car and you cut me off, then I'm mad and I'm flipping you off. And then if you let me in, I'm happy and I'm waving, and it's like, basically I'm behaving according to like my emotions or what other people are doing. So now other people are in charge of my behavior. Right. So if you're using ACT, you say like my commitment is to be calm and kind. And then I'm going to behave that way, even while I'm feeling annoyed or even while I'm feeling happy or whatever comes my way. That's how I'm going to behave. So that's kind of like it in a nutshell. Yeah.
That is the struggle bus right there for to dig deep and become more than just what your emotions are. You know what I mean? That's a lot. It takes a lot of work.
I like to make it sassy, like you can't make me behave in a way that I don't want to behave. Right? Like my behavior is mine. It belongs to me. Like there's nothing you could do that is going to make me behave in a way that is against my values.
Yeah, we're not trying to be puppeteered, right?
That's right.
But in addition to that, for a couple feeling stuck in a cycle of why is this happening, how does practicing acceptance actually lead to more freedom in the relationship?
Yeah. I mean, why is this happening is a reasonable question, right? This is not okay, right? The problem with why is this happening is there's not really any place to go from there. I mean, you're not going to get the answer. We don't know. It's random. So the thing about acceptance is that there's a Byron Katie quote that I love. It's like one of my favorite quotes. And she says, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time.
Right.
So the thing is that like, I get why is this happening, but when you can get to a place where you're like, look, I don't know if I'll ever get back to where I was. I don't know if I'll ever find a cure and be something different, but I am right here, right now. And right here, right now is the only place that you can affect change from. Right. You can't make change if you're dwelling in the past or in the future. You can only make change from right here. So like, it's almost like a prerequisite for a couple to accept that this is where they are if they're going to find a way to move forward.
Yeah, well said. Now to my single spoonies out there, when you get into a relationship or even when you get married, there's just one word that we cannot avoid at all. And that word is conflict.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Lisa, you've also written about healthy conflict.
Yeah.
When both partners are exhausted and one is in pain, how can they argue effectively without the chronic fatigue turning a small disagreement into a relationship-ending flare-up? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's one mistake that people make with conflict, all people, not just couples with chronic illness, that is, I think, the biggest problem with conflict. And that is that you're only arguing about stuff or talking about stuff when you're already mad about it. Right. So like, I know what my problems with my partner are, right? But I'm not going to bring them up on Saturday morning when things are going fine, right? So I'm going to wait, right? I'm going to wait till he does that thing that I hate. And then I'm mad already. And now I'm going to try to have this argument. Neither of us are going to I'm probably not going to start it well. They're going to get defensive. It's going to escalate. That takes 10 times more energy from my body, than if we did sit down on a Saturday morning and say, hey, let's have a 20-minute talk about how to get you more self-care time. Or let's have a 20-minute talk about how to manage our finances with all the cures that you're looking to pursue. So the thing about, this is a tip for everyone in conflict, is just stop arguing when you're already mad. But it's especially a tip for people with chronic illness, because you can't afford the energy that it costs to argue when you're totally pissed off. You have to be able to have daily, regular 20-minute conversations that are calm, to try to creatively problem solve whatever it is that you're struggling with. That's going to take so much less energy than, blowing up when something happens.
Right. And that definitely takes a lot of communication building.
It does. Yeah.
Even going back into your chapter 1 of your book, I was reading where it pretty much, whether chronic illness exposes the foundation that you kind of set up within the relationship, whether it was a healthy setup or not so healthy.
Yeah.
When a chronic illness comes in, it's an overlay and mixes the pot like nobody's business. Super profound on that piece. Now, with redefining intimacy, and that closeness. We know that chronic pain often changes what's physically possible. Okay. And I don't want to go too far into that, but how do you coach couples to broaden their definition of intimacy so that connection doesn't feel like a risk to their physical health?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that many of us have lost sight of is that intimacy and sex are not the same thing.
Thank you.
So yes, I do agree that there are some actual physical things that you may or may not be able to do. But I always ask people, so when I'm working with couples in this situation, I always ask them, think back to the first person you had a huge crush on, right? That returned your crush, right? Before you ever had sex, like maybe you were 13 or 12 or something like that.
Right.
Remember how sensual it was to just hold their hand or look into their eyes or kiss them or snuggle with them. For some of us, those are the most intense, powerful memories we have. And they're not about sex. They're about intimacy. And so there is so much healing in touch and sensuality. And when you back up and start from the beginning and just start to try to sink into pleasure, sensuality, touch without any kind of an end goal, a lot of my clients report that they're actually more intimate now than they ever were before, because sex was the main event and they just went straight there and nothing else. They didn't actually take the time to look into each other's eyes or kiss or, any of that other stuff. So you can actually be more intimate. It's going to look different. That's for sure, but I don't think you have to lose intimacy because you have a chronic illness.
Thank you for clarifying that, the whole intimacy aspect, I think that's a layer within the chronic illness journey where there's just such an immense pressure on the person. There's this performative aspect, what the aspect of sex goes. We know that when chronic illnesses come in, a lot of our governing faculties start to diminish as far as the energy, libido, and all that other stuff. Sometimes the chronic fatigue itself, we might end up saying, I don't have the energy for that right now.
Absolutely. Right.
And that can definitely put a damper in the relationship. And I think we kind of neglect the little things. It's not the fireworks all the time. We got to be reasonable here. We got to understand that our bodies are changing, our circumstances are changing. What can we still do, and kind of take that into our own hands?
Yes, absolutely.
Now to the thriving mindset. I know professionally you've probably seen it all. So tell me, what is that one common thread you see in the success story couples who manage to stay together but actually get stronger after a diagnosis?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is an issue that applies to all couples everywhere, probably, is that, we have this fantasy in our culture. Well, first of all, nobody teaches us how to do relationships,
Right.
And so we have a fantasy in our culture that if you love someone, it's just going to work out. You shouldn't have to work hard to make a relationship work if the relationship is right. Right. And so most people are just coasting, mindlessly in their relationships. They're not, I asked a couple the other day, I'm like, would you never have a meeting if you owned a business? Would you not write a business plan? Would you never have meetings with your people? Of course you would. Right. But in marriage, we go along, we don't set up, regular meetings with our partner. We don't make plans or have goals and those kinds of things. We just expect that it should happen because we love each other, and that's ridiculous. Right. So, with my chronic illness couples that are successful, it's because they have taken the advice to be very intentional about connecting with each other. So they have committed to like regular daily conversations where they keep in touch with like the map of each other's experience. They touch each other often, like, again, nothing threatening or that requires a lot of intimacy. They just stay connected in that way. They have a deep empathy for each other and each other's experience. So even though I'm miserable, I can also have empathy for the fact that my partner might be struggling too. They revise their activities and goals. So this is one of the things about ACT is like, most of us don't really spend a lot of time figuring out what our values are, right? We're in our culture, we're more focused on like activities and goals and all of those things.
Right.
But for most of us, our activities and goals are actually based on our values, even if we don't really know it. And so what happens when a chronic illness comes along is your goals and activities have to change. You can't do those things anymore, but your values don't have to change. You might just you might have to adjust your activities and your goals, but you can still live towards the same value systems that you have. So like the couples that are successful have actually sat down and been like, this is the kind of couple we want to be. This is what we want our legacy to be. This is how we create meaning in our lives. And here's the things that we actually can do in our current circumstances to live towards those values. So it's really about being intentional. Like the couples that are successful don't just expect this to like somehow work out. Right. They make a plan, they sit down, they talk, they have empathy, they touch, they decide how to live their lives together so that it's meaningful.
Wow. Lisa, I have to say, there's so much knowledge being dispersed right now, and I'm trying to pin everything down as you're talking because all of this is so useful. And I think what I'm admiring the most about you currently is that you yourself, you have a chronic illness, and you're here helping other people find their relationship and their foundation again. I think what I admire again is that you're also helping people to feel alive and not just exist in the realm of their chronic conditions and their experiences. Yeah. And it's kind of like what I'm doing with this podcast. Yeah. And I guess I have to ask this one valid question. What is the most heartbreaking part about trying to live and thrive with a chronic illness?
I think probably for me personally, I feel a little bit of regret that I didn't get to do all the things with my kids that I would have liked to done when they were growing up. I mean, they tease me. They're like, we didn't go to Disneyland. I think we went once, but, I spend my life really managing my energy and guarding my energy. And what that means is I spend a lot of time reading or, being at home. And so, I mean, my kids are happy. They're well-adjusted. They don't blame me or anything like that. But, looking back, I always wish, I wish I had the energy to sit out at a soccer game all day on Saturday or, those kinds of things. And again, I don't think it hurt them, but yeah, probably for me, that's just my biggest sadness.
Well, shout out to your kids, even though I still think your kids can look back at those times and look at you and say, wow, mom was so resilient. And you know what? That resilience that we're talking about right now, if we're thinking about chronic couples, that is the peak of relationship goals right there. But Lisa, we know life with hypermobile EDS doesn't always give us time for a slow pour conversation. Right? Yeah. I get it. I hear my friends talk about it all the time. Sometimes a flare hits, the schedule breaks, and you need your wisdom in a concentrated dose. Yeah. So, Lisa, do you happen to like espresso?
Not really. I'm not a huge coffee person. I have a cup of coffee in the morning, but I'm not really,
Well, I hate to break it to you, but today's going to be your first day to try some espresso because
excellent.
This is our Espresso Shot Round. Four quick fire questions. No overthinking allowed. Are you ready to pull some shots?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. What's one word both partners should keep in their pockets for when things get heavy?
Love.
Love. Oh my God, that was And that's the end of the show. Now, just go next question. Next question. What is the number one rule every chronic couple should have for when a flare hits unexpectedly?
Adjustment.
Oh, adjustment. Powerful answer. Okay. What's your go-to song or activity to top up your cup when you've had a long day of sessions?
Late in the Evening by Paul Simon.
Late in the Evening by Paul Simon. All right, Spotify, we're adding that. All right, last question. Besides yours, what's one book you think every couple in our community should read?
The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris.
The Happiness Track. All right.
Yeah.
Now, we're getting ready to take our final parting sip, okay? Lisa, if a listener is currently feeling like their illness has become the only thing that their partner sees, what is one truth you want them to hold on to today?
So in ACT therapy, there's a skill that we teach called self as context, which is kind of just like a lot of words. But basically, it's like you're more than your illness. And it's easy to forget that. So like the metaphor that I'll give you is like you're the sky and your illness, your circumstances, the medical gaslighting, people who don't believe you, that's all just weather. You know, so like we've all had that experience, right? Of like taking off in an airplane and the sky is just completely clouded over and then you burst out and like, oh, there's the blue sky, right? Yeah. That's you. That's you. Like there's all this stuff and there are days that it completely covers the sky. I totally get that. But you're still the sky that's behind all of those things. There's still a you that exists outside of whatever you're experiencing or your symptoms or all of those things. So I think this idea of like really being committed to the idea that you can still thrive, you can still have a meaningful life. It's not going to look like it did, but you still can because you're still you. So it's like, I think when you achieve this mindset, it's easier to give your partner something else to see besides just the sick you. You know, right. And so, but if you think that your sickness is all that you are, then there isn't anything else for your partner to see. Right. And so I think like really working on this idea that like, yes, this is happening to me. It sucks. It shouldn't be this way and all of those things, but there's still a me here that my partner fell in love with, you know, and I just need to help them see that part of me also, in addition to the part of me that needs help or assistance or whatever.
Wow. Phenomenal. Lisa, that was the perfect note to end on. I just want to say thank you for being so open about your journey with HEDS and for giving us a roadmap, not just to stay together, but to actually grow together. You know, it's been a total pleasure having you here at the table. But before we head out, where can listeners find more of your work, follow your book reviews, or even pick up a copy of Thriving in a Relationship When You Have Chronic Illness?
Yeah, so there's a website, lisagrayauthor.com. You can get both of my books there. My therapy website is lisagraymft.com. And you can find me there, plus the 6 therapists that I have working for me. And then I'm on Instagram, lisagraymft. And I also review therapy books and self-help books on Instagram at Therapy Book Nook.
And there you have it, peeps. For everyone listening, if today's conversation hit home, I highly recommend picking up Lisa's book, Thriving in a Relationship When You Have Chronic Illness. Like, I can't even stress it enough. I'm starting to read the first chapter and I'm loving it already. We'll have links to the book, her website, and her social media in the show notes so you can keep up with the conversation. And to the chronic couples out there, remember that your relationship is a slow brew. Some days are bitter, some are sweet, but as long as you're sharing the cup, you're doing just fine. Thanks for tuning in to The Chronic Brew. I'm your host, Mr. Cool Beans, and this is Lisa Gray. And until next time, keep your spirits high, your flare kits ready, and your coffee hot. I know Lisa doesn't drink coffee, but I'm turning into a coffee drinker.
Yeah, but you might.
But we'll definitely see you guys on the next episode. Take it easy.